underneath a previous video, a viewer/commenter asked me which game I thought was better, the 2006 Michigan versus Ohio State game or the 2016 Michigan versus Ohio State game. I've decided to address that in two separate videos, and in this video I'm going to discuss and take a look back at the 2006 Michigan versus Ohio State game in Columbus. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76 Sports. First of all, please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. Well, I'm back with a historic / retrospective piece on the 2006 Michigan versus Ohio State game down in Columbus. As we've been approaching this 2021 season, most of my content has involved the upcoming season and the last season, but I built the channel with a lot of historical retrospectives about the Michigan program and some of its former players and some of its most memorable matchups. And so in this video I want to take a look back at the 2006 Ohio State game, the Michigan versus Ohio State game down in Columbus. As we all know, it was an exciting game for the Michigan fan base. It didn't turn out the way that we wanted it to, but it was a memorable game nonetheless. And actually a commenter asked me what I thought about which game I thought was better, the 2006 or the 2016. I'm going to address those in separate videos. And I've talked about these two games to some degree in many of my videos. I've touched upon these two games in many instances, and I would encourage you all to go and take a look back at my Troy Smith video, because I did shoot a video in tribute to the Ohio State assassin Troy Smith. So with that, let's talk about the 2006 Michigan versus Ohio State game down in Columbus. The best way I can describe that 2006 Michigan Ohio State game down in Columbus, especially the lead up, is that it was very much like one of the old school boxing matches / prize fights, whether it was Mike Tyson when he was in his prime going up against one of his many opponents, or whether it was Sugar Ray Leonard matching up with Marvelous Marvin Hagler or Thomas the Hitman Hearns or Roberto Duran. That entire 2006 season felt that way. From week one up until late November, it was, Michigan and Ohio State were ranked number 1 and number 2 in the BCS standings, and both teams were on a roll, marching towards that game. And the only thing I can tell you or should I say the best thing that sums it up is that with each passing week, there was just anticipation that was building and building and building and building for that heavyweight matchup in Columbus. At the start of the 2006 season, the Michigan football program was looking to rebound from a very, very mediocre 2005 season, which ended with a heartbreaking loss at the Big House to Troy Smith and the Ohio State Buckeyes, and then in a bowl game. I think it was the Outback Bowl. It was down in Texas, and I think it was against Oklahoma or Nebraska or one of those teams. And Michigan wound up losing that game. So it was a very, very mediocre and in some ways a bizarre season. And that was my last, those were my last days in Ann Arbor as a student slash graduate research assistant. And then the next year I moved to the Albany area to do my postdoc. And so the question was, now with Chad Henne being a junior, Mike Hart being a junior, Mario Manningham and Adrian Arrington at the wide receiver positions, and Tyler Ecker at the tight end position. I think Tim Massaquoi was still on the team, and you had a veteran offensive line, and you had a veteran defense with Lamar Woodley back there, and Rondell Biggs, and Sean Crable, and Prescott Burgess, and all those guys. I think Prescott Burgess was still on that team. How was this team going to do? I think Alan Branch was a part of that unit as well. So how was this team going to do? And it turned out that the team, I really think they came out and they had something to prove, and they literally charged out of the gate. And that this was most evident in our early season butt whooping of Charlie Weiss, Brady Quinn, and Notre Dame down in South Bend. And when I was watching that game, you were able to see explosive plays down the field to Mario Manningham. So Chad Henne was looking downfield, and he was going to Mario Manningham. He was going for things underneath. But you also saw how physical our defense was. And Notre Dame couldn't really get anything done during that game. So it was a blowout victory for us. And as a fan base, it was really, really exciting going forward, because you're looking at that and you're thinking, okay, now we have a team with which we can finally beat Jim Tressel, Troy Smith, and Ohio State. So if this is what it looks like, we can actually go down to Columbus and win that game in November. Now that season, Ohio State was, in my opinion, continuing its ascension. Troy Smith, after Craig Krenzel and that group that won the national title that magical season, once that group graduated, Troy Smith and the new group came in, and Troy's success, it steadily built year after year after year after year. And if you watch my Troy Smith video, and if you saw any of those games, Troy Smith became the bane of our existence, the football team and our fan base. And he, on numerous occasions, for his first 2 years, he showed us his mobility, and he also showed us his arm. And so those first 2 years, Ohio State beat us. Those first 2 years of Troy Smith's being the starter. The Buckeyes arguably would have been in the BCS title game against USC, I think in 2005, in January of 2005. That's the year that Vince Young led his Texas Longhorns over the USC Trojans. But Ohio State arguably would have been in there if Troy Smith had played that game against Texas. I think he played the game, but he didn't get to start the game because he got into some trouble. I don't know if it was marijuana or something else related to that, but the point is that Vince Young got to play the entire game. Troy Smith didn't, and that gave Texas an advantage. And at the end of the season, when the BCS committee and the computers calculated who should be number one and number two, Texas got the nod over Ohio State. But Ohio State was definitely good enough to get in there and match up with USC. So again, Ohio State was continuing their ascension. They were continuing their rise. It had been happening the previous 2 years. And so now you had this team at the top of the Big Ten, and then you had another team that was trying to make up for the previous year and really seemed to be ascending itself. And they were both building towards that November 2006 matchup in Columbus. I still remember the game. I still remember watching the game. I was in Albany, New York, doing my postdoc, and I watched the game with the Capital Region University of Michigan Spirit Group. So they had a little alumni club right there in the Albany area, and the game watch location was actually Jillian's right there in downtown Albany. I think it was Pearl Street, but that's the exact same location when I walked in and I saw our team spanking Notre Dame earlier that season, and I remember encouraging my father to come to the game, and all of us had on our maize and blue, and the whole table was dressed in maize and blue, and it's funny because for many fans, unless you attend a school like the University of Michigan or Ohio State or USC or Alabama, for people who aren't used to that culture and being that invested in your team and your program, some people don't necessarily understand what that level of fandom and passion is like. And I'm not sure that day my pops, shout out to my pops, I'm not sure he understood that level of fandom and why it was so important for us to win that game and why we were rooting so hard for our team to beat Ohio State. But I still remember the game, and in my opinion, as an onlooker, what it came down to, what decided the game, was Ohio State's offensive game plan. I think Jim Tressel and whoever else was in that room helping him X and O and diagram, I think they looked at it and they said, okay, Michigan has a physical defense. So if we come out and play a Wisconsin style of football where we're handing off to the running backs and really trying to assert ourselves at the line of scrimmage, Michigan is going to have the advantage. So why don't we spread that physical defense out with 4 wide receivers, put Troy Smith in the shotgun for most of the game, give him extra time, make it hard for that pass rush to get there. That'll give us a better chance to win the game. So that's exactly what the Ohio State offense did. They spread defensive coordinator Ron English's defense out like this, and Troy Smith literally stood back there all day playing pitch and catch with Ted Ginn Jr., Brian Rubisky. I think the Heartline kid was back there, maybe Anthony Gonzalez as well. Just that entire group. Troy Smith got the ball in the shotgun and was just playing pitch and catch for the entire game. And I remember my father, as I'm talking about my father and reminiscing, I remember he kept saying, wow, that Troy Smith, he's razor sharp. He's razor sharp. And I was like, dude, go sit at another table. But Troy Smith was razor sharp. And I remember watching that game and thinking, okay, why can't our pass rush get there? Why can't they get there? Why can't they get there and sack him? But Troy was just that good. He was mobile. He was accurate. And he had a touch on the ball. And then once our defense attempted to adjust to stop that, then you had the 2 back-breaking runs by Antonio Pittman and Chris Beanie Wells. So, and if you look at the Michigan players during that game, particularly on defense, there was a look of bewilderment, like, okay, how is this happening? This has not happened to us the entire season. Well, Ohio State was ready for that defense. And the other thing is, similar to Don Brown's defenses under the Jim Harbaugh, in the Jim Harbaugh regime, it's interesting that the Michigan defensive coordinators almost never think about how Ohio State, in this instance, or other opponents will counter. And it's interesting that they almost never think of, okay, we're known for doing this. Our opponents might come out and do this to us. And I'm not knocking Ron English, but it just seems like in the biggest games against Ohio State has something that we're not ready for, and that our defensive coordinators and our student athletes are not ready for. And that day, I thought that day we saw that. I thought, and so even with that, it came down to, so we lost Willis Behringer, who was a senior safety. I don't know if that would have made much of a difference if Willis had played the entire game, but I remember Willis Behringer going out. But even with Troy Smith and the offense clicking like that, our offense, and I thought once we went down 28-7, I thought we were done. But our offense had enough with Chad Henne and Mike Hart and Mario Manningham and Adrian Arrington. Our offense had enough skill and firepower and enough toughness and grit and heart to battle back. Our defense did get a few stops on that Ohio State offense, and our team battled back. And I thought that the play of the game, as we were driving late and trying to catch up and trying to put the game in overtime or to steal it, the play of the game, in my opinion, and my uncle even called this too when he observed this, was the Sean Crable targeting call on Troy Smith as Troy Smith was going out of bounds. If we had gotten that stop, our offense would have gotten the ball back, and we potentially could have driven it down for the go-ahead score. But that call, which was a very, very close call, gave Ohio State a first down, and they were able to run the clock out. So the final score ended up being 42-39, and when you look at that score, or should I say when I look at that score, I feel like the Michigan offense played well enough to win that game. We had weapons all over the place, in the backfield, at the skill positions. Chad Henne had a strong arm. I thought that, and I've created videos on, I'm thinking about my Drew Henson video. If Chad Henne had Drew Henson's mobility and his ability to improvise on the fly, I think we could have. I think that could have made a difference in that game. But Chad was like Tom Brady; he stood back there, and if the pressure got to him, he oftentimes went down. But 39 points. If someone would have told me we would have scored 39 points on Ohio State, I would have picked us to win the game. But again, it was Ohio State's offensive game plan that shredded a defense that played exceptional the entire season, that I think decided that game. And I think that's what they say, defense wins championships. And I think that's what everyone was banking on going into that game, the fact that our defense would do what it did the entire season and help carry us to the victory and to the BCS title game. But in the aftermath of that 2006 game, both teams lost their bowl game. Michigan, I believe we lost to USC in the Rose Bowl. Shout out to Lloyd Carr. Well, at least we still get to go to the Rose Bowl. And then Ohio State lost pretty handily to Urban Meyer's Florida Gators. So in the aftermath of all of that, I scratched my head and I wondered, wow, was Michigan, were Michigan and Ohio State for that entire season, were we really the number 1 and 2 teams in the nation? Or was that an artifact of our records and the calculations by the computer and the BCS committee? But clearly, we were not a better team. We were not the better team against USC, and Ohio State was not the better team against the Florida Gators in that national title game. So those are my thoughts on the 2006 Michigan-Ohio State game. I'm going to shoot one on the controversial 2016 Michigan-Ohio State game down in Columbus. I've talked about it in bits and pieces in my content, but I'm going to dedicate a whole video just to that. So, hey, let me know what you think, and let me know your memories of that 2006 Michigan-Ohio State game down in Columbus. Please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. If you want to leave something in the tip jar, that information is below this video. Go blue, and as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye. Hello all. Well, as often is the case, after I shot the main part of this video, I thought of a few more things that I thought were worth capturing and tacking on the back of the main video for the sake of completeness. The first item involves Bo Schembechler. And, we're in this season of this scandal and pondering Bo's legacy, and the University of Michigan family is deliberating on whether or not to continue to hold Bo up in high regard, and it's pondering whether or not to continue to have him be the face of the program, and it's pondering, the community's pondering whether or not to have him continue to be the Papa Bear and the grandpa of the program. And just before that heavyweight title fight down in Columbus in November of 2006, it turns out that Bo passed away just before that game. I think it was a day or two before the game, and I think the story was that he was actually at a radio station going to, and he was going to talk about the game on that day. So obviously that, for our fan base and for the football program and for the university and for Ann Arbor, that was a huge blow going into that heavyweight title fight in Columbus. And I think, when you lose someone like that, I think, I know the players and the coaching staff must have gone into the game thinking, okay, we're going to get this one for Bo. And obviously they didn't. But I just thought that it was, even with what's going on now, it was significant enough to include in this video and in this story, because it was a part of the story of that game. And even being out in Albany, New York, and having left Ann Arbor, I think within less than a year, I felt that the fact that Bo passed away just before the big game. Now, item number 2 involves Lloyd Carr. And I actually did shoot a video on Lloyd Carr. And I think I'm going to leave all of my videos related to that era and all the players involved in that era. I think I'm going to leave that below in the description box in case anyone wants to go take a look for themselves. But when I look back at that 2006 loss to the Buckeyes in that heavyweight title fight, I think that was I think Lloyd might have coached 4 games against Jim Tressel at that point, and so that was perhaps 3 out of 4 losses to Jim Tressel. So Jim Tressel, when he came in, he owned the series, and it just so happens to turn out that Michigan lost the 2007 game the next year. So I think Lloyd went, 1 for 4 or 1 for 5 against Jim Tressel, and I think Chad Henne and those guys never ever beat the Buckeyes. They never beat Troy Smith. They never beat Ohio State. So there were several classes, in Lloyd's last few years that never ever beat Ohio State. The next season featured the backbreaking and embarrassing opening season loss to Appalachian State. And I think that 2006 team was the last strong and highly competitive Michigan football team up until maybe year 1 of the Brady Hoke tenure, when he took over for Rich Rod, and he inherited Rich Rod's players, most notably Denard Robinson. And then you could make the argument that the next strongest team and the most competitive team after that was either the 2015 or the 2016 team, in which Jim Harbaugh took over for Brady Hoke and inherited his players. But the 2006 team, that was the last really, really competitive and relevant Michigan football team for at least the next 5 years and maybe the next 10. So, as you know, after the 2007 season, that's when Lloyd Carr retired, and then we got the Rich Rod years, and then the Brady Hoke years, and then Jimbo took over in 2015. So I just wanted to say that game had several significances. Bo died immediately before it, and then even though the team was competitive in 2007, it was not as competitive as that 2006 team, and we all know that the 8-year drought started immediately after that 2007 season, after Lloyd Carr retired. So that's all I've got, guys. I just wanted to add that on to the main part of the video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please leave comments below. Go Blue, and I'll talk to you later. All right, bye-bye.